It's me again. I'm gonna continue reading from my book, The 1900s. Okay, here we go. Life goes on. Several days after the storm, Ella Seeley Newell heard a boy whistling. We all stopped to listen. It was the first joyous sound we had heard. Anything gay or bright in dress or manner seems utterly out of place. As time passed, most Galvestonians absorbed their losses, picked at the debris, and resumed living. Isaac Klein, with Cora still missing, went back to work with his head bandaged and a foot poulticed. In his final report, he recounted his own experiences in flat, declarative tone. Among the lost, he wrote, was my wife. As to the future, I believe that a seawall which would have broken the swells would have saved much loss of both life and property. Cora's body was found a few weeks later, identified by her engagement ring. Over the next decades, a seawall was finally built and most of the city's grade was raised. Hurricanes have continued to pound Galveston every now and then, but without the disastrous losses of the 1900 storm. That dreadful catastrophe reminds us of the folly of underestimating the power of nature, even in the most modern of circumstances. Its upshot suggests the stubborn resilience of human will in the face of calamity. Chapter 3. Politics and Reform. Roosevelt in charge. A.E. Campbell. In the view of historian A.E. Campbell, author and longtime fellow of Keble College, Oxford, England, Theodore Roosevelt was quick to grasp the essence of presidential power and knew just how to use it to his best advantage. Roosevelt, he contends, believed in scientific government and in reform, but was not as dangerously radical as the conservatives of his time thought him to be. Campbell attributes Roosevelt's strong reputation in foreign affairs as much to the inactivity of Roosevelt's predecessors as to his actual accomplishments. Some historians believe that Roosevelt's accomplishments were more public relations than models for change. Campbell does not disagree totally, but argues that perhaps Roosevelt gave the people what they wanted. A voice in the world, no more and no less. Roosevelt did not spring up at once as the leader of a fully recognized progressive movement. His position in 1901 was quite different. He had come to the presidency by accident. He had not won in his own right. His political credit was less for that reason. Nobody owed him anything. Moreover, the presidency was far from being the central office it has since become. Members of both houses of Congress cherished their independence. Their leaders were powerful political figures, and the techniques of cooperation between the White House and Capitol Hill were primitive. Convention indeed forbade too close intimacy. No president since Jefferson had addressed Congress in person, a convention not to be broken until Woodrow Wilson's time. And while the president could propose and he would draft legislation, the amount of direct support he could give to his proposals was not great. The two houses of Congress were very different in character, more so than they have since become, and they maintain a lively rivalry in which the Senate, unlike most other upper chambers, more than held its own. The members of the House of Representatives were chosen by direct popular elections. The members of the Senate were not. Until 1913, when a reform, which was one of the last achievements of the progressive movement, changed the rule, they were elected by state legislatures. This had the effect, as the framers of the Constitution had intended, of removing the Senate from the influence of democracy, to some extent at least. It made it easier for powerful and wealthy men to find their way to the Senate without fighting their way up through the lower reaches of politics, and easier to stay there when they arrived. The politics of small groups is significantly different from the politics of large ones, and the Senate was a small group. It was also an undisciplined group, presided over by the vice president, who was not a member. The Senate had a long tradition of egalitarianism It was easy to frustrate business and hard to expedite it. A handful of leading and influential senators dominated the proceedings by agreement among themselves, and one gained influence by conforming to and manipulating the rules of this club. Senators were individualists more than party regulars. They were also extremely deeply conservative. The conservatism of the Senate was a powerful obstacle to reform by legislation. The House of Representatives could hardly have been more different. Its membership was much larger, directly elected, and subject to re-election every 2 years. The business of the House would have fallen into chaos under rules as lax as those of the Senate. It was presided over by a speaker, ordinarily chosen by the members of the majority party. The post-war period, during which major issues of principles were hard to find, paradoxically increased the pressure for party regularity, and two speakers give it institutional form. T.B. Reed of Maine, Czar Reed, formulated the rules which gave virtually autocratic power to the Speaker and to the chairman of committees, who were also nominees of the majority party. When Reed retired from the speakership and from the House of Representatives on a point of conscience, he was unwilling to preside over a party which was committed, he believed, to imperialism. He was succeeded by Joseph Cannon, Uncle Joe, of Illinois. Cannon, who held office as Speaker from 1901 to 1911, had even more power than Reed, and he used it more and more ruthlessly as his own highly conservative views became increasingly out of tune with his times. In 1910, a revolt in the House by a combination of Democrats and radical Republicans deprived the Speaker of much of his power, and no speaker since has achieved Cannon importance. But whether because Reed prized procedure and party regularity above all, or because Cannon was a cunning, ruthless conservative, the House in the first decade of the 20th century was not an easy body through which to pass reform measures. It was not by accident that the demand for reform of Congress came to rank high on many a progressive list of reforms. On Roosevelt's side, it may be questioned how great his own faith in legislation was. And in countries so various as the United States, the charge that any piece of legislation was special in the sense that it benefited a certain group rather than the people or the nation as a whole was easily made and damaging. It was a hard charge to which the Democratic Party had perhaps become more sensitive than the Republican. But in the years before Roosevelt took office, more of a precious time was taken in vetoing private bills than in constructing positive legislation. All his life, Roosevelt was apt to place more faith in the cooperation of honest men than in legislative rules. At any rate, it was clear to him that legislation could not be his first resort. First, he had to win the confidence of congressmen, or some powers with which to impress them, or both. Please comment, rate, and subscribe down below. And if you're on TikTok, please follow and like my videos. And if you want my username to see what I'm selling on Mercari and eBay, please comment down below. Okay, bye.